The emptiness of space hung eerily quiet, a sharp contrast to the turmoil ready to erupt. Admiral Dorian Reigns watched from the command deck of the HSS Retribution, observing the tactical screen flicker with locations of hostile ships. The Galactic Dominion had believed humanity was feeble. They thought Earth was merely another planet to dominate, another civilization to crush. They were about to discover their mistake. The Dominion had battled the Tyrannical, a reptilian civilization with an empire covering hundreds of star systems for centuries. It had been a slow, exhausting struggle. Battles raged over identical systems repeatedly, like an endless game of cosmic strategy. But when the Dominion focused on Sol, demanding humanity's surrender, they had committed a critical error. Humans did not surrender. Humans evolved. Humans battled. The conflict had begun with skirmishes, raider assaults, vessels vanishing near settlement planets. Then came the siege on Mars. The Dominion believed it would conclude rapidly, but they hadn't anticipated humanity's absolute stubborn determination to survive. Now Earth was responding with complete strength. "Admiral," came the voice of Commander Nathan Solis from his workstation. "The Dominion Armada is maintaining position in the Lagrange Point. Defensive arrangement. Appears they believe they're prepared for us." Admiral Reigns smiled slightly. "Then let's demonstrate how mistaken they are." The human armada moved in like a tempest. Smooth, dark warships, their exteriors coated with adaptive concealment, shifting to match the blackness of space. Dominion sensors calibrated to identify energy patterns in motion struggled to maintain tracking. By the time they understood the assault had commenced, it was already finished. The opening wave was devastating. HSS Fury, HSS Nemesis, and HSS Warhammer spearheaded the charge. Kinetic projectiles traveling at near-light speeds punctured through Dominion barriers like tissue. Plasma bursts shot out, cutting through enemy clusters. A Dominion battleship detonated, its wreckage scattering into the emptiness. They had never witnessed anything similar. Humanity's equipment wasn't the most sophisticated in the galaxy. Their vessels weren't the biggest. But they were rapid, they were unpredictable, and most critically, they battled with the type of brutal effectiveness that the Dominion, accustomed to slow, prolonged conflicts, had never faced before. The Dominion command ship Trax's Honor transmitted a frantic emergency signal. Reinforcements were already traveling, but the communication was obvious. They weren't going to survive that long. Reigns stood motionless, his gaze fixed on the holographic screen. "Activate the rail cannons," he commanded. The Retribution's massive twin rail cannons powered up. The Dominion had encountered energy armaments before. They had seen missiles, but they had never confronted something like this. Humanity's rail cannons were devastatingly straightforward. Massive projectiles accelerated to unimaginable velocities, ripping through hostile ships with pure kinetic energy. The initial shot fired, a Dominion battleship in the middle of their arrangement, absorbed the impact directly through its center. A moment later it was eliminated. Reduced to a zone of expanding debris, terror spread through the hostile armada. Their arrangements collapsed. Dominion officers trained in hierarchy and rigid strategies were unprepared for an adversary who could anticipate their actions and respond with brutal, calculated hostility. "Admiral," Solis called again, his voice thick with shock. "They're fleeing." Reigns crossed his arms, observing as the hostile armada scattered. Some attempted to escape. Others simply capitulated, powering down their armaments and broadcasting surrender signals. 1 minute. That's all it had required. "Let them escape," Reigns stated coldly. "But ensure the communication spreads. Earth is not to be challenged." The battle was concluded. Humanity had materialized, and the galaxy would never be identical. The Dominion's flight transmitted shockwaves across the galactic battlefront. Armadas that had once feared nothing now rushed to reevaluate their approaches. The information spread like wildfire. Humanity wasn't merely another insignificant civilization. They were something far more dangerous, an adversary that didn't battle like the rest of the galaxy. They battled to triumph. On board the HSS Retribution, Admiral Dorian Reigns stood before the massive holographic screen in the strategy chamber. His officers assembled around. The battle had been an overwhelming victory, but he understood this was only the start. Commander Nathan Solis was the first to break the quiet. "They won't accept this defeat quietly. We embarrassed them. Their pride demands retaliation," Reigns acknowledged, his expression serious. "Precisely. And that's why we don't wait for them to strike back." He turned to Major Lillian Carter, the Chief of Intelligence Operations. What do we understand about their nearest command facilities? Carter, a seasoned officer with years of covert operations experience, tapped a few inputs into her device. The screen zoomed in on the star system Vela 9, a heavily defended Dominion station. Vela 9 is their most powerful forward installation in this sector. If they want to strike back, this is where they'll reorganize. Then we strike them first, Reigns declared. We transmit a communication loud and unmistakable. Earth doesn't wait for the tempest. We are the tempest. A murmur of agreement rippled through the officers. This was how humanity battled. They didn't play defense. They brought the battle to the adversary. Solus, still analyzing the information, frowned. Vela 9 isn't merely a military station. Civilians reside there. Dominion loyalists, certainly, but also displaced persons and non-combatants. Reigns breathed out slowly. The chamber grew quiet. This was conflict, but humanity wasn't a civilization of conquerors. They didn't massacre indiscriminately like the Dominion had when they destroyed settlements on the outer territories. We focus only military targets, he stated firmly. If we eliminate their command structure, the civilians won't even be involved. We do this precisely, Carter acknowledged, but there was a hint of something else in her gaze. She had witnessed too many conflicts, understood too well that there was no such thing as a precise battle. The following few hours were a blur of strategy and coordination. The armada moved rapidly, navigating through slipstream passages to reach Vela 9 undetected. The Dominion had barely begun regrouping when the human armada emerged from hyperspace. It was an ambush unlike anything the Dominion had ever encountered. Stealth attackers bypassed protections before their sensors even registered the assault. Rail cannon rounds tore through supply facilities, severing the Dominion's logistical foundation. Precision attacks disabled communications, cutting Vela 9 off from the rest of the armada. By the time Dominion forces scrambled to respond, it was already finished. The HSS Retribution hovered menacingly over the shattered remnants of the facility. A transmission request came through. The face of a Dominion commander appeared on the display, his reptilian features twisted in fury. You dare strike us like cowards, he snarled. You hide in the darkness, strike from the shadows. This is not conflict. This is dishonor. Reigns leaned forward, his voice ice cold. You misunderstand us, Commander. We don't care about honor. We care about winning. The transmission severed. The Dominion understood now. Humanity was not just another civilization to be intimidated and dominated. They were a hunter. And the pursuit had just begun. The aftermath of the battle left Vela 9 in devastation. Its once proud Dominion stronghold reduced to little more than scattered debris. Fires still burned in the remnants of its command facility, though there was little left to recover. The Dominion had underestimated humanity again, and it had cost them severely. Admiral Reigns stood at the observation platform of the HSS Retribution, observing as salvage mechanisms scoured the remains for anything valuable. The battle had been rapid, decisive, surgical as intended, but he understood it wouldn't be the final one. Commander Nathan Seles approached, his expression unreadable. The Dominion Armada isn't responding to emergency calls from Vela 9. Either they're too frightened to confront us, or they're planning something bigger. Reigns crossed his arms. We've backed them into a corner. The next action will be desperation. Major Lillian Carter's voice cut through the bridge communications. Admiral, we just intercepted a transmission from deep within Dominion territory. Let's hear it. Carter's face appeared on the primary display, her features tight with concern. The Dominion High Command just classified us as a Category Omega threat. That's their highest classification, reserved for civilizations deemed existential dangers. Silence filled the chamber. Everyone understood what that meant. Solus exhaled. So they're calling for complete conflict. Carter acknowledged. Every armada, every warrior, every armament they possess. They'll throw everything at us. Reigns wasn't surprised. He had anticipated this reaction, but hearing it confirmed was something else entirely. The Dominion had battled other conflicts before, but never against an adversary like humanity. They had never battled against an opponent who learned, who evolved, who battled not just with power but with ruthless, calculated hostility. They believe they can overwhelm us with numbers, Reigns stated, turning back toward the emptiness outside. They don't understand that we don't battle like them. We don't follow their rules, Solus acknowledged, though there was a shadow of uncertainty in his expression. Even so, Admiral, this isn't just an armada anymore. This is the entire Dominion war apparatus. We're discussing hundreds of battle groups, millions of warriors. Armaments we haven't even witnessed before. We'll battle smarter, Reigns stated simply, and we'll battle harder. Carter tapped at her terminal. That's not the worst part. Our operatives have confirmed that the Dominion is reaching out to the other major empires. They're attempting to rally the entire galactic community against us. That was the real challenge. Humanity had just made its mark in the galaxy, and already they were being portrayed as a threat to every other civilization. If the Dominion succeeded in convincing the neutral factions to join their conflict, Earth wouldn't be confronting a single empire. They would be confronting the combined might of the galaxy. A lesser civilization might have surrendered, might have attempted to negotiate to find a diplomatic solution, but humans weren't designed that way. Reigns turned to his officers, his voice carrying a quiet steel. We transmit a communication of our own. Solus raised an eyebrow. And what's that? We demonstrate why making an adversary of Earth is the final mistake they'll ever make. Across the Armada, the command went out. Conflict preparations began. Humanity would not be crushed. Humanity would conquer. The Dominion wasted no time. Within days of the Vela 9 destruction, reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Entire battle groups were being mobilized. Armadas stretching for light years, converging toward human-occupied territory. The Dominion had called for complete conflict, and the galaxy had responded. Admiral Reigns stood in the command facility of the HSS Retribution, staring at the vast network of hostile movements projected onto the holographic table. Crimson dots swarmed like a plague, each one representing an armada determined to destroy humanity. Commander Nathan Celeste exhaled sharply beside him. We're facing a coalition of over 12 civilizations. The Dominion pulled every favor they possessed. Even the Terralis, their sworn adversaries, have agreed to a temporary alliance to eliminate us. Reigns wasn't surprised. Humanity had accomplished the unthinkable. They had introduced dread into a galaxy that had long thought itself superior, and nothing united old adversaries like dread. Major Carter's voice came through the tactical channel. Commander, intelligence confirms the primary armada is gathering near the Trian expanse. If they push through, they'll reach our outer settlements within a week. Solus ran a hand through his hair. We can't halt a force that massive in open battle. Even with all our equipment, all our strategies, they'll overwhelm us. Reigns remained quiet for a moment, then he looked up. We don't battle them in open combat. Solus frowned. Then how? We bleed them, Reigns stated. We don't let them bring the conflict to us. We take the conflict to them. A slow smile spread across Carter's face. You're discussing hit-and-run tactics? Not just hit-and-run tactics, Reigns clarified. Complete disruption. We don't just assault them. We terrorize them. We cut supply routes, sabotage their command networks, turn every planet between here and Earth into a death trap. They believe they're marching toward victory, but by the time they arrive here, they'll be shattered. Solus let out a low chuckle. Guerrilla warfare, but on a galactic scale. Reigns acknowledged, it's what humans do best. The strategy was set in motion immediately. Strike teams were deployed to hostile supply routes, planting covert agents and sabotage cells within key logistics centers. Covert operations struck Dominion fuel depots, causing critical shortages before battles could even start. Stealth armadas harassed the adversary's long-range scouts, making it impossible for them to obtain accurate intelligence. And then the real assaults began. At Zara Station, the Dominion's primary resupply location, human infiltrators disabled automated protections minutes before an assault armada arrived. Detonations tore through the facility's infrastructure, and before the adversary could even mount a counterattack, the humans were gone. At Beck 5, an industrial planet supplying Dominion warships, a series of accidents triggered catastrophic chain reactions in their primary construction yards. Within hours, hundreds of ships were reduced to burning wreckage. At Veok Prime, one of the Dominion's key communication centers, cyber warfare teams unleashed a digital plague that caused confusion and miscommunication among the coalition forces. Battle strategies were scrambled, reinforcements were misdirected, and in some cases, Dominion vessels fired on each other. The galaxy had never witnessed conflict waged like this. The Dominion, so accustomed to prolonged battles fought with honor and predictable strategies, found itself flailing against an invisible adversary. Humanity didn't battle with brute power. They battled with relentless ingenuity. And then came the real turning point. A Dominion dreadnought, the Vector, carrying a high-ranking war council, was traveling to the front lines. It was a mobile fortress, supposedly untouchable, But the humans had other intentions. A single stealth corvette, HSS Phantom, managed to slip past the Dominion escort. Aboard it were some of the most elite warriors humanity had ever trained. They boarded the Vector, cutting through the vessel's protections like shadows in the darkness. Within an hour, the Dominion's War Council lay eliminated, their throats cut in their own strategy chamber. By the time the Dominion even realized what had occurred, the HSS Phantom was long gone. Terror gripped the coalition. Leaders hesitated, armadas stalled. For the first time, the war apparatus ground to a halt, not because of superior firepower, but because the adversary had shattered their confidence. Solus stood beside Reigns as they observed the latest battle reports. They don't understand what to do, he stated with a smile. They're accustomed to battling armies. They don't understand how to battle an idea. Reigns smirked. That's because they don't comprehend what they're up against. Solus crossed his arms. And what's that? Reigns turned, his expression cold and unwavering. They're battling humans. The Dominion's war apparatus was grinding to a halt, but not because of a lack of materials or reinforcements. No, the true adversary wasn't starvation, nor was it attrition. It was uncertainty. The adversary no longer understood where to strike. Every time they gathered their forces for a decisive push, their supply routes mysteriously collapsed. Every time they attempted to reorganize, their armada commanders wound up eliminated, their warships sabotaged. They were battling shadows. Admiral Reigns stood at the command position of the HSS Retribution, observing the endless sea of stars before him. Reports from intelligence were obvious. The Dominion was stalling. Their coalition partners were second-guessing their commitment. The Terralis, always opportunistic, had pulled back their armadas, unwilling to suffer more casualties. The Voran hierarchy, once eager to prove their loyalty to the Dominion, were now losing vessels faster than they could replace them. But the Dominion itself, they were still holding on. Barely. Commander Nathan Soles stepped up beside him. We've bled them, Admiral. They're disorganized, demoralized. One more strike, one decisive blow, and we could end this. Reigns exhaled. And what's your suggestion? Solis tapped on the holographic screen. The star map zoomed in on a single point. Primaris 1, the Dominion's true home planet. Not just a military center, but the beating heart of their empire. You want to bring the conflict to their capital? Reigns asked, raising an eyebrow. Solis acknowledged. They believe we're just hit-and-run raiders. They assume we'll stay in the shadows. But if we strike Primaris 1, if we hurt them where it matters, they'll have no choice but to surrender. Major Carter chimed in through the communications. He's correct. If we destroy their leadership, the Dominion collapses. Nobody else in the coalition will keep battling without them. Reigns studied the hologram for a long moment. This was it. The final move in the game. The Dominion had declared complete conflict. Now humanity would finish it. We do it, he stated finally. We take the capital and we end this conflict. The battle for Primaris 1 began with fire and fury. The HSS Retribution led the charge, emerging from slipstream space with the complete force of humanity's combined armada. The Dominion had fortified the system, deploying dozens of battle groups and planetary protections. But none of that mattered. The humans didn't battle fair. Electronic warfare teams hijacked hostile communications, feeding them false commands. Dominion armadas turned against each other in the chaos, mistaking allies for adversaries. Precision orbital attacks hammered key infrastructure, cutting off power grids, command facilities, and planetary barriers. And then the ground invasion began. Elite human shock troops deployed across the capital city of Vecta Prime, where the Dominion's ruling war council had barricaded themselves in the Citadel of Lords. The Dominion, once a proud empire of conquerors, now found itself under siege. Nathan Solis led the assault himself, cutting through the last of the Dominion's defenders. He and his strike team breached the War Council's chambers, weapons raised. The Dominion lords, once so arrogant and untouchable, now cowered before them. One of them, a high-ranking warlord, hissed through his fanged jaw. This is impossible. We are the Dominion. You are lesser than us. Solis leveled his rifle at the alien's head. Not anymore. A single shot rang out. Admiral Reigns observed from orbit as the Dominion surrender was broadcast across the galaxy. Their once mighty empire brought to its knees, not by sheer numbers, not by superior firepower, but by ruthless strategy. The conflict was finished. Humanity had entered the galactic stage, not as a minor player, not as another civilization to be pushed around, but as a force to be feared, and the galaxy would never forget. The conflict was finished, but peace was not guaranteed. The Dominion's surrender transmitted shock waves across the galaxy. Their once mighty armadas drifted aimlessly, leaderless and fractured. Their allies, once so eager to battle humanity, now scrambled to distance themselves from the losing side. Some planets rejoiced in the fall of their oppressors. Others feared what would come next. Humanity had proven itself a force to be reckoned with. But now the real question remained. What would they do with their victory? Admiral Reigns sat alone in his private quarters aboard the HSS Retribution, staring at the latest reports. Across former Dominion territory, revolts had erupted. Entire settlements that had once been enslaved were rising up, purging their former overlords. Some called for independence, others called for revenge, and some called for human rule. A soft chime rang through the cabin. The door slid open, revealing Major Carter. She saluted sharply before stepping inside. "We have a problem, Commander," she stated. Reigns set down his data device. "Just one?" Carter didn't smile. "More like a dozen. Reports are coming in from the outer Dominion sectors. Some of their military governors refuse to acknowledge the surrender. They've declared themselves warlords, rallying whatever armadas they have left." Reigns exhaled. "Of course they have." Carter hesitated. "And there's something else. The coalition is uneasy. The same civilizations that were once willing to battle us now see us as the next galactic superpower. Some are already whispering that humanity is the new threat." Reigns leaned back in his seat. He had expected this. No empire simply won a conflict and walked away without consequences. The galaxy had learned to fear humanity. But fear was a fragile thing. It could turn into respect, or it could turn into hatred. Before he could respond, the intercom crackled. "Admiral, incoming transmission from the Terran High Council. Priority 1. Reigns glanced at Carter, then acknowledged. "Patch it through." The holographic screen flickered to life, revealing the stern face of Chancellor Elias Monroe, Earth's highest-ranking political leader. His expression was unreadable. "Admiral Reigns," Monroe stated, his voice measured. "Congratulations on your victory." Reigns inclined his head. "Thank you, Commander." Monroe's eyes darkened. "But I'm afraid we have little time to celebrate. The Dominion is shattered but not destroyed. Rogue warlords are already rallying their forces. And worse, the galactic community sees us as an unstable power. If we don't act rapidly, we risk another conflict before this one is even cold." Reigns understood. "What's the Council's decision?" Monroe took a deep breath. "We occupy the Dominion's core planets. We stabilize the region under human governance." Carter's eyes widened slightly. Even Reigns felt the weight of those words. "You want us to rule them?" Reigns asked carefully. "Temporarily," Monroe clarified. "We don't have to hold their entire empire, just the key systems. If we don't, another power will. And the last thing we need is another galactic warlord rising up to finish what the Dominion started." Reigns crossed his arms. "And what occurs when we do take control? Do we leave? Do we stay? How long before humanity becomes just another empire?" Monroe's face was unreadable. "That depends on what occurs next." The transmission severed. Carter exhaled. "We just won the conflict, and now we're about to start something bigger." Reigns acknowledged slowly. He understood what came next wouldn't be about battles or armadas. It would be about power. And power had a method of changing everything. The occupation of the Dominion's core planets began rapidly. Humanity moved with surgical precision, deploying armadas to strategic locations, securing vital infrastructure, and ensuring that no warlord could rise from the ashes of the shattered empire. At first, the remnants of the Dominion fought back. Scattered military units desperate to reclaim their lost glory launched ambushes against human patrols. Terrorist cells fueled by hatred for their new rulers detonated explosives in key government facilities. But none of it was sufficient. The Terran forces had battled too long, too hard to be undone by desperate insurgents. For every assault, humanity responded with overwhelming force. For every rebellion, there was rapid retaliation. Admiral Reigns oversaw the operation from the bridge of the HSS Retribution, observing as his warriors secured one Dominion planet after another. Commander Soles stepped up beside him. "Most of their resistance is shattered," he stated. "The few warlords left are battling each other more than they're battling us." Reigns studied the holographic screen. Dominion territory, once a chaotic mess of civil conflict, was slowly stabilizing under human control. "And the rest of the galaxy?" Reigns asked. Soles hesitated. "They're observing. The Taralis, the Voran, the other civilizations who once backed the Dominion, they're nervous. Some believe we'll become conquerors. Others believe we'll collapse under our own weight." Reigns sighed. "And what do you think?" Soles smirked. "I think we just put ourselves at the center of the galactic stage, and everyone's waiting to see what we do next." In the halls of the Dominion's former capital, Vecta Prime, humanity's occupation was beginning to take shape. Major Carter walked through the newly established command facility, observing as Terran officials worked to organize the planet's shattered government. Former Dominion administrators, now forced to work under human oversight, muttered bitterly as they compiled planetary reports. Armed warriors stood watch over them, ensuring compliance. A Dominion governor, a reptilian creature known as High Speaker Keltar Ven, sat before her, his scaled face contorted in barely suppressed fury. "This is not governance," Keltar spat. "This is occupation." Carter leaned forward. "That's because it is an occupation." Keltar let out a low growl. "And how long do you believe you can hold it? The galaxy will not allow humanity to seize control of our empire. You may have won the conflict, but you cannot hold on to victory forever." Carter's expression was cold. "We don't need to hold it forever. Just long enough to ensure the right individuals are in charge when we leave." Keltar narrowed his eyes. "And who decides who is correct?" Carter smiled. "We do. Despite human control over Dominion territory, threats still loomed. Deep in the uncharted regions of the galaxy, something observed. A shadowy figure stood aboard a darkened command bridge, its form obscured by swirling mist. Behind it, a group of hooded figures murmured in an alien tongue. "The humans have proven themselves formidable," one voice stated. "They have accomplished what none before them could. They are dangerous," another agreed. "But they are also reckless. Their empire is built on force, not stability." A third voice, older and colder, spoke last. "Then let us ensure they never find stability. Let us remind them that in the darkness of the emptiness, there are things far older and far deadlier than them." The hooded figures acknowledged in unison, and the shadows moved. Back on Vecta Prime, Admiral Reigns stood on the balcony of the former Dominion Palace, overlooking the city below. Human banners flew where Dominion emblems once stood. Armed patrols moved through the streets. The once mighty empire of conquerors now lived under human rule. Soles stepped beside him. "So what now?" Reigns didn't answer immediately. He gazed, out at the stars, understanding that their victory had only led to greater dangers. The conflict had ended. But the next battle was just beginning. The shadows moved unseen, whispering through the emptiness between the stars. Humanity had conquered the Dominion, but something far older had been observing. And now it was moving. Admiral Reigns sat in his command chamber aboard the HSS Retribution, reviewing intelligence reports. The Dominion's remaining forces were either surrendering or tearing each other apart. The occupation was holding for now, but the weight of their victory was already pressing down on him. Commander Soles entered the chamber without a word, dropping a data device onto the table. His expression was serious. Reigns picked up the data device. "What am I examining?" Soles crossed his arms. "A pattern, one we shouldn't be witnessing." The report contained star maps marked with strange anomalies. At first glance, they appeared like nothing. Just deep space disturbances, unexplored voids. But the more Reigns studied them, the more he saw the truth. "These systems," Reigns muttered. "They're perishing." Solus acknowledged. Sensors picked up something strange in multiple Dominion territories, planets with sudden mass extinctions. Orbital facilities going completely dark, entire armadas disappearing. No emergency calls. No debris, just gone. Reigns leaned forward. "Are we dealing with a rogue faction?" Solus hesitated. "We don't believe this is Dominion-related, Commander. Some of these star systems weren't even occupied. And yet something erased them." A chill ran down Reigns' spine. The Dominion had been a brutal empire, but they had been predictable. This was something else. "Where was the final incident?" Reigns asked. Solus tapped the data device. A single name appeared. Zaris 4. A fringe settlement planet deep in former Dominion territory. No communications for over a week, Solus stated. It was supposed to be a minor refueling facility. Population of 600,000. Our scout transmitted a probe. Reigns glanced up, and? Solus hesitated before swiping on the data device. The holographic screen flickered to life, displaying footage from the probe. At first, nothing but static. Then darkness. The planet below was eerily quiet, covered in deep black scars. No lights, no movement. Cities were still intact yet lifeless. No visible damage, but every building appeared wrong, as if something had emptied them. Then the footage cut to black. That was the final transmission, Solus stated. After that, the probe was gone. Reigns set the data device down slowly. "This isn't a rebellion," he stated. "No," Solus agreed. "This is something else." Reigns clenched his jaw. He had spent his career battling adversaries he could understand. The Dominion, for all their cruelty, had been alive. But whatever this was, it felt like death itself. The HSS Revenant reached Zaris 4 within the week. It was one of humanity's best reconnaissance ships, outfitted with stealth equipment and deep space sensors. Major Carter led the team personally, landing in one of the settlement's main cities. She stepped out of the dropcraft, pulse rifle in hand, her boots crunching against the eerily quiet streets. The city was untouched but empty. No bodies, no signs of struggle. Doors were left open, meals half-eaten on tables. It was as if the entire settlement had simply vanished. "God," one of her warriors muttered. "This is worse than a battlefield." Carter kept moving, scanning the area. Then she stopped. Her display flickered. A whisper echoed in her helmet, a strange static-filled voice. "You are not ready." Then the lights above flickered and the shadows began to move. Back on the HSS Retribution, alarms blared. "Commander," an officer shouted. "We just lost contact with the Revenant." One moment they were there and then nothing. Reigns shot up from his seat. "Get me visuals." The display flickered. At first, nothing but static. Then an image. A single frame. The ruins of Zaris 4, and something standing in the center of the city. Tall, featureless. Blacker than space itself. Watching. The transmission severed. Silence fell across the bridge. Then slowly Solus exhaled. "Admiral," he stated quietly. "What the hell did we just wake up?" The silence that followed was thick with tension. The bridge crew of the HSS Retribution remained frozen, staring at the dark display where the final image of Zaris 4 had played. Admiral Reigns felt the weight settle in his gut. He had battled conflicts, witnessed entire armadas reduced to wreckage, observed civilizations crumble under orbital bombardments. But this was something else. This was an adversary he couldn't see, and it had just eliminated one of his best teams. Solus exhaled sharply. "Commands, Commander?" Reigns' mind raced. The smart move, the logical move, was to pull back, report this anomaly to the Terran High Council, and let scientists and analysts break it down. But Major Carter was down there. His warriors were down there. He wasn't leaving them behind. "Prep a recon team," Reigns commanded. "We're going to Zaris 4, Solus tensed. "Commander, we don't even understand what we're up against." Reigns met his gaze. "Then it's time we discovered." Hours later, the HSS Revenant 2, a heavily armed infiltration cruiser, descended into the dead skies of Zaris 4. The storm clouds above were unnatural, black, twisting, alive. The sensors struggled to penetrate the haze, but Reigns didn't need a perfect reading. He could sense it in his bones. Something was wrong here. Aboard the dropcraft, the retrieval team double-checked their armaments. Experimental plasma rifles, motion trackers, and enough explosives to level a city block. "Remember," Reigns stated over the communications, "this isn't a rescue mission. We don't understand if anyone's left alive." The dropcraft doors slid open, revealing the ruins of the city below. And the emptiness. Buildings stood intact. Vehicles remained parked along the streets. Streetlights flickered in eerie rhythmic pulses. But there were no bodies, no signs of struggle. Just a city abandoned in an instant. The team moved forward cautiously. Eyes up, Solus muttered, scanning the rooftops. This place feels like a goddamn grave. Reigns gritted his teeth. It wasn't a grave. A grave had bodies. This was worse. They found the HSS Revenant near the city center. Untouched but eerily quiet. The vessel's exterior was fine. No battle scars, no forced entry. Yet the crew was missing. Reigns stepped inside, rifle raised. The interior was intact, but the air was thick with something unnatural. The lights flickered. Shadows seemed longer than they should have been, and in the command center, a single message had been scrawled across the walls in black tar-like fluid. They are not eliminated. They were taken. Reigns felt a cold chill crawl up his spine. Then his communication crackled. "Commander," came a shaky voice. "You need to see this." Reigns followed the signal to a side alley. A single figure stood in the shadows. Helmet cracked. Armor scorched. Major Carter, alive. But when she turned, Reigns saw her eyes. They weren't hers anymore. And she started to whisper in a voice that wasn't her own. "They are awake." The air in the alley grew colder as Major Carter's voice rasped through the communications, unnatural and layered, as though something ancient spoke through her. "They are awake." Admiral Reigns tightened his grip on his rifle, his instincts screaming at him to fire, to end whatever this was. But this was Carter, one of his best. He couldn't, not yet. "Carter," he stated, his voice steady despite the dread clawing at him. "What's occurring? Who's awake?" Her head tilted unnaturally, her blank, hollow eyes locking onto his. "The ones who came before. The ones who wait beyond. You woke them when you tore the Dominion apart." Commander Celeste stepped forward, his armament trained on her. "Admiral, she's not herself. We need to—" Before he could finish, the ground trembled. A low resonant hum pulsed through the city, vibrating in their bones. The shadows around them stretched and twisted, no longer bound by the laws of light or physics. From the edges of the streets, tall, featureless figures emerged, blacker than the emptiness, their forms shifting like liquid darkness. "Retreat," Reigns barked into his communications. "All units, fall back to the dropcraft now." The team didn't hesitate. They opened fire as they retreated, plasma rounds tearing into the figures. The shots seemed to dissipate into nothingness, swallowed by the entity's forms. The hum grew louder, drowning out the sound of gunfire. Carter didn't move. She stood there whispering as the shadows closed in. Reigns grabbed Solesse. "We're not leaving her." "Commander, she's gone!" Solesse shouted, pulling back. "Look at her." But Reigns didn't listen. He charged forward, slamming into Carter and dragging her toward the dropcraft. Her body was limp, but her lips kept moving, muttering incomprehensible words. The entities surged after them. Faster now. The city itself seemed to warp. Buildings bending inward, streets cracking as though reality was unraveling. The dropcraft engines roared to life as the team piled in. Reigns threw Carter inside just as one of the shadow figures reached for him. Solus fired a point-blank plasma burst, and for a split second the entity recoiled. Enough time for the doors to slam shut. "Get us out of here," Reigns roared. The dropcraft shot into the sky, the HSS Revenant II waiting above. Behind them, Zara's force shuddered. The black scars on its surface spread like a disease, consuming the planet. Then in an instant it vanished. Not destroyed, not shattered, but gone, as if it had never existed. Back aboard the HSS Retribution, the crew worked frantically to stabilize Carter. She was alive but unresponsive, her vitals erratic. Scientists in hazmat suits scanned her, their faces pale as they whispered about unknown energy patterns and anomalous cellular degradation. Reigns stood over her, observing as her lips twitched, still forming silent words. Solus approached, his voice low. "What the hell was that, Admiral? What did we just battle?" Reigns didn't answer immediately. His mind raced, piecing together the fragments. Carter's words. The Dominion's collapse. The sudden emergence of these things. Whatever they weren't just a threat. They were a consequence. "We didn't just win a conflict," he stated finally. "We shattered something. Something older than the Dominion. Older than us." Solus frowned. "You believe this is our fault?" "I believe we kicked over a rock," Reigns answered. And something crawled out from underneath. The communications crackled. A transmission from the Terran High Council. Admiral Reigns, Chancellor Monroe's voice cut through, sharp and urgent. We've lost contact with 3 more systems near Zaris 4. Reports of shadows. What's occurring out there? Reigns exchanged a glance with Soles, then he straightened, his resolve hardening. We've got a new adversary, Commander, he stated. And it's not one we can battle with rail cannons. Monroe's silence was heavy. Then what do you propose? Reigns gazed at Carter, still whispering in her trance. He thought of the Dominion's fall, humanity's rise, and the cost they hadn't seen coming. We discover what they are, he stated. We figure out how to halt them. And if we can't halt them, we make damn sure they regret waking up. Months later, the galaxy remained on edge. The Dominion was a memory, its planets now under human stewardship. But the shadows lingered, a quiet menace spreading through uncharted space. Humanity evolved as it always had. Armadas were refitted with experimental sensors to identify the entities. Scientists raced to comprehend the unknown energy patterns. Warriors trained for a conflict nobody could fully grasp. And in a secure laboratory aboard the HSS Retribution, Major Carter awoke. Her eyes were her own again, but haunted. She spoke of endless voids, of voices that whispered from beyond time, of creatures that had waited eons for a crack in the universe to slip through. They're coming, she warned, and they're not afraid of us. Reigns stood beside her, his face etched with determination. Good, he stated, because we're not afraid of them either. The conflict with the Dominion had ended, but humanity's true battle for survival, for its place in the cosmos, had just begun. And whatever came next, they would confront it as they always had, with fire, with cunning, and with an unyielding will to endure.